It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. We're here every single day from 5 to 6 talking about the local issues that matter to you most and taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Your emails as well at randykabc@gmail.com. And wherever you get your podcasts, give a search for the KBC News Blitz and hit subscribe. Today, we're talking retail theft, specifically the act of thieving certain items from stores, whether they be cigarettes from convenience stores or deodorant from pharmacies, and then selling it blatantly on the street. We see this pretty rampantly and pretty blatantly in places like MacArthur Park in Los Angeles, and we see it even more blatantly at 6th Street and Market in the Mission in San Francisco. And part of the reason that illegal street vending is so rampant is because it's legal. That's the most California thing I think I could possibly ever say about this state. But in 2018, as a then act of defiance against the then Trump administration, Ricardo Lara, then a state senator, not yet the insurance commissioner who decided to destroy the entire state, he wrote a bill. That bill was called SB 946, the Safe Sidewalk Vending Act. It decriminalized every aspect of street vending in some kind of symbolism because most people who do street vending, according to Ricardo Lara, are either immigrants or immigrants in the country illegally, and we want to protect them. We want to make sure that even if they're violating certain rules, even if they don't have a permit, that it is not a criminal offense and they don't get any kind of trouble. So it turned into an administrative thing. Every aspect of street vending, according to the state of California, ever since 2018, is an administrative problem, which means law enforcement cannot get involved with any aspect of the Safe Sidewalk Vending Act. So you have departments of public works and departments of public health that will go out and do inspections and do permitting because we made it against the law for law enforcement to regulate street vendors. We made it against the law for law enforcement to do anything when it comes to street vendors. So while that had some maybe good intentions, you never know with Ricardo Lara.
I'm very kind of sketchy.
One of the loopholes that it caused immediately was if you decriminalize all forms of street vending and sidewalk vending, well, what do you know? You have now made it impossible for law enforcement to do anything about somebody on the side of the street or at a park selling stolen goods. That is no longer a criminal offense going back to 2018, and the criminals know it, and the massive rise of retail theft and Gavin's favorite term, organized retail theft, leads to that very point. Now they call it fencing, where you pay a booster, usually it's a juvenile or a homeless person, to go break into somewhere. Like, let's say you pay a juvenile to steal a Kia, and they crash that Kia into a convenience store. Like the one in San Francisco, cigarettes cheaper. They've had their establishment burglarized 4 times in the last 6 months. I don't think they have any cigarettes left. So the criminals steal the cigarettes, and you always see these headlines, right? Got to steal them cigarettes, stealing cartons and cartons of cigarettes. They're not smoking the cigarettes. As far as I know, and you know, you can't sell cigarettes on eBay, and I don't think you can sell them on Amazon. And I don't think they're going to go to the trouble of stealing a carton full of cigarettes to send it to another country and sell it there. So where are all the stolen cigarettes going? It's not like the copper wire where they're literally selling it to the recycler and the recycler selling it back to the city or the county. Somebody has to be buying those cigarettes. Well, you as a fencer can take the stolen goods that you paid the booster to get, and then you can be in MacArthur Park or on Market Street, and now you're selling cigarettes really cheaper.
I'm very kind of sketchy.
You're selling Lucy's too. It's just one cigarette. I know all the lingo. And that's just one example of the completely legal process of selling stolen goods. It's not legal to steal them, but you have to get caught for that. But according to California law, SB 946, authored by this jackass,
I'm very kind of sketchy.
It is against the law to enforce the law criminally when it comes to any aspect of sidewalk vending, including the sale of stolen goods. Now, today in San Francisco, State Senator Scott Wiener had a press conference with the new mayor, Daniel Lurie, to announce that he is finally going to do something about this and right this wrong from 2018. We have the sound. Let's go to the Mission in San Francisco.
We're here today to announce new legislation. The San Francisco allows fencing enforcement on our Streets Act, or Safe Streets Act.
Wait, is it only for San Francisco? Because I know you're a state senator and you represent San Francisco, but if you're doing a statewide bill, go check out MacArthur Park. Go check out what's going on what used to be beautiful, historic Alvera Street. There is a lot of illegal stolen goods vending going on here. Yeah, some of it goes to Amazon, and we've talked that to death. And I personally think there's some culpability for the platforms that authorize and enable the sale of stolen goods. But so many of these stolen goods are sold right back on the street. I don't know who the hell's buying them. I don't know. You got to have some Jones for nicotine if you're buying aftermarket cigarettes.
To address a significant and growing problem in the Mission and other neighborhoods, specifically the sale of stolen goods on our streets.
Which, remember, is something law enforcement cannot enforce with current law.
I want to be clear. We're not talking about the amazing, beautiful street vending that happens in the Mission and in various parts of our city where people sell their prepared food and flowers and crafts and other wonderful products. Street vending makes our city a better place.
We're not talking about the pupuserias. We're not getting rid of those. You can still enjoy your pupusas, and enjoy them you will, because pupusas are amazing.
It's not what we're talking about today. We are talking about the sale of stolen goods. These fencing operations.
I don't have the time to research it, but I think Scott Wiener was still in the state Senate in 2018. I need to find out how he voted on this. Maybe I could find this out, because sometimes you go into Google and you type in a bill like SB 946 and leginfo.gov usually comes up. That's the legislature's info. You can look at votes. You can look at history, the bill analysis. Can you tell me? You can tell me who voted aye. Now I look for Wiener. All right. I don't know if he was in the state Senate then. Maybe he was. Ayes. Yes. Scott Wiener voted for SB 946, which was written by, again, Ricardo Lara.
I'm very kind of sketchy.
Hey, I looked that up on the fly. That vote was on May, and then once again, no, that was the final vote in the Senate was in May of 2018. Then it went to the Assembly where it passed. Then it went to the full Assembly where it passed. And then it went back to the Senate floor as amended. And Scott Wiener voted for that. Scott Wiener voted to do away with now the thing he is trying to undo. So at least in some circumstances, the man's not totally crazy. But untangling the web of legislative insanity from Sacramento takes a very long time. I have previously told you about Scott Wiener's 5-year battle to end the car break-in loophole. This was another thing that was put into California law. I don't know exactly when. I'll look that one up at some point as well. And this is something that finally, after 5 years, got passed and signed into law with Gavin's fancy schmancy, we're taking down retail theft package that you didn't need to vote yes on Prop 36, but we all voted yes on Prop 36 anyway. And the car break-in loophole was if you are a victim of a car break-in, you have to testify under oath in person at the trial for the Bipper that you know and will attest to that the car was locked. It doesn't matter if the circumstantial evidence is the broken glass means the car was obviously locked. You had to personally come in and testify. And what do you know? That's incredibly difficult for tourists in a tourist city like San Francisco. And so what do the Bippers do? They target the obvious rental cars. And they know that even if they get caught, it is very unlikely that the person visiting from across the country or around the world is going to come back to go to a trial to testify that, yes, they know the car was locked. That was insane California law that took Senator Scott Wiener 5 years to get passed. Didn't pass until last year. He put it up for a vote every single year for the last 5 years, and it wasn't until last year that he finally had enough public support behind making sure that it's fairly obvious that the car was broken into because it was locked.
These fencing operations fuel retail theft, because that's where they get the stolen goods, drive out legitimate street vendors who are at times living in fear.
Oh, yeah, that's the other thing. These criminal groups, the ones that are selling all the stolen goods, they go after the largely immigrant community of the legal street vendors, and they kind of make sure that they get out of the way and they don't interfere with their business. You want to sell anything, you could sell it.
And undermines public safety. It needs to stop. We began this journey almost a year ago when I introduced the first version of this legislation last year.
Oh, okay. This is the other part of this story. And it's funny, as I was listening to this press conference, it was all sounding very familiar to me because I've known about this story and this issue for quite a few years now. But it was about a year ago that Scott Wiener did a press conference with then Mayor London Breed about the exact same thing. In fact, I remember when we were first starting to discuss all of the illegal street vending, and one of the side effects of what happened when it comes to decriminalizing all sorts of street vending is when you have public works employees, not law enforcement, who have to go give administrative fines to the people selling stolen goods, they were getting beaten up and threatened by the obvious criminals that knew nothing could happen to them. And so London Breed at a press conference said, there is state law that we have to change. That's what we need to do. I remember that very specifically because that's when I started to look up what state law was she talking about. Turns out it's SB 946, written by Ricardo freaking Lara.
I'm very kind of sketchy.
And so Scott Wiener a year ago had a press conference, talked about the same issue, introduced legislation in the now we're taking crime seriously California legislature of 2024, and it did not pass. So here we are for round two.
We began this journey almost a year ago when I introduced the first version of this legislation last year. And we had multiple committee hearings where a large number of our primarily Mission street vendors came up to Sacramento and spent the day. They got to see the good parts and the challenging parts of the California legislative process.
The California legislature denied super progressive Senator Scott Wiener's bill to recriminalize the sale of stolen goods on the street. That's how insane the California legislature is, or at least the vast majority of the legislature is. Even Scott Wiener can't get common sense bills passed.
And they spoke from the heart to my colleagues in describing what was happening on the streets and why the bill was important. I want to thank them for being here.
A year later, and now you got to introduce this bill again, and maybe we got to do more to get more attention to this. Maybe Gavin's got to get asked about this at a press conference, because Gavin can actually say, I had nothing to do with this. This was passed and signed into law under Jerry Brown, not Gavin Newsom. But this is one of the stupidest pieces of legislation that I have ever seen. Not Scott Wiener's bill he's talking about today, but SB 946. What was it called again? The Safe Sidewalk Vending Act. the Decriminalize All Kinds of Street Vending Act. And by the way, the state is mainly to blame here, and the legislature, and then Governor Brown, very much to blame here. But here's an interesting part of the story. In order for SB 946 to take effect in your county, whether it's Los Angeles County or San Francisco County, you have to opt in. You have to say, yes, I want to opt in to the new rules of SB 946, and I want to decriminalize all forms of street vending in my county. And San Francisco said yes, and Los Angeles said yes, which means that now the enforcement of everything related to street vending is not the task of LAPD or LA County sheriffs. It's Barbara Ferrer.
Yeah.
Everybody's connected. All of the architects of destruction in the state of California, to use a Villanueva-ism, they're all connected in some way.
I want to be very clear that we are distinguishing between our permitted street vendors and people selling stolen goods. I can't say that enough. Sometimes the two get conflated and they have nothing to do with each other.
Yes, because I would imagine if you're selling stolen electronics, you don't have a permit for that or any way to prove that you purchased that legally. And again, nothing we could do because it's decriminalized.
We know that since sometime in 2023, these illegal fencing operations have become increasingly disruptive. In addition to causing more and more retail theft, they pose risks for the street vendors who are just trying to sell their goods, as well as for city workers who have been assaulted as they have attempted to engage in administrative enforcement against these folks who do not have permits. I want to thank our public.
We have criminal gangs operating in full daylight on these streets. This is happening in Northern California in the Mission, and it is happening every day in Southern California in places like MacArthur Park. And they can openly intimidate city workers. They can assault city workers. They can assault other legal street vendors and get away with it because we, thanks to people like Scott Wiener, voted to decriminalize every aspect of street vending.
I'm very kind of sketchy.
Thank you so much, Ricardo Lara, the gift that keeps on giving. I beg you, especially our listeners in Los Angeles, whether he runs for another statewide office, whether he runs for another local office, we know he's thinking about the Board of Supervisors. Please stop voting for Ricardo Lara for anything. Everything that man has touched has turned to dust. He already made the state less safe as a state senator and then went to the insurance commissioner's job and has destroyed the entire system of insurance in the state of California. We get a lot more. We'll hear more from Scott Wiener as he tries to untangle this web and probably won't be successful at it. We'll have some talk from Daniel Lurie, the mayor of San Francisco. We'll hear some Q&A, and we'll hear from you if you want to comment on this insanity. You just found out that we decriminalize street vending. How do you feel about that? 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. We're going through State Senator Scott Wiener's latest attempt to untangle the insanity of Sacramento when it comes to things that he voted on 7 years ago, like voting to decriminalize every aspect of street vending, which turned out to de facto legalize selling stolen goods on the streets of San Francisco and Los Angeles and places like MacArthur Park. Before we get back to this presser, let's go to Dave in Whittier. Dave, hello.
Am I on the air?
You are.
Randy, I cannot believe this. I thought I was hung up on. You guys are absolutely been magnificent all day, and I'm going back to 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm serious, because I had a doctor's appointment, this and that. But from the beginning to the right now, and I don't know how you get any sleep, Randy, but thanks for doing what you're doing. Street vending, good gravy. I've been running into street vendors over and over and over, but I tell them, because they're not violent. The ones that I've run into are absolutely not. They're just trying to get by. And what I'm trying to say is the deportation thing has to happen, but as long as they're not confronting any policeman or fireman or stealing and getting caught doing anything, I don't want a mass this is my thinking. I think that Donald Trump's approach is so magnificent, but you have to, and I'm going to help you, continue to call out Governor Newsom and all his people behind them. But
I'll be on it, my friend. I will be on it. That's what we do here. Happy hour started a little early for that guy. But thank you so much for the call. Believe you me, my friend, we are on it, and we are here every day to point out the insanity that goes on in the state of California. Because if you don't know about it, then you can't do anything about it. 800-222-KABC is the phone number. 1-800-222-5222. That's the number if you're sober. 800-222-KABC is the number if you're not sober. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. We're here every single day from 5 to 6 talking about the local issues that matter to you most and taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Your emails as well at randykabc@gmail.com, and search for the KABC's News Blitz wherever you get your podcasts. We're listening to the sound of California State Senator Scott Wiener's press conference introducing a bill for the second year in a row that would recriminalize selling stolen goods on the streets of San Francisco. Apparently, it's only for San Francisco. He doesn't want to also do that for Los Angeles, even though this is rampant in places like MacArthur Park. This, of course, is in reaction to a bill that Scott Wiener voted on in 2018, the Safe Sidewalk Vending Act. Is that what it was called? The Safe Sidewalk Vending Act, which decriminalized all aspects of street vending in some misguided attempt to protect the immigrant community, which caused a huge loophole that means if you're selling stolen goods on the street, law enforcement can't do anything about it. And of course, what do we find out today? That bill was written by Ricardo Lara.
I'm very kind of sketchy.
I did some research during the break, and I feel like I need a law degree just to look up, laws. I guess that's why there are lawyers. But do you know California's burglary penal code goes all the way back to 1872, although it was amended in 1984 and 1991. And I got to imagine when it was amended in 1991, that's where we get this really confusing text. But the original penal code of burglary from 1872, every person who enters any house, room, apartment, tenement, shop, warehouse, store, mill, barn, stable, outhouse, or other building, tent, or vessel, as defined in Section 21 of the Harbors and Navigation Code, floating home, as defined by a subdivision of the Health and Safety Code, railroad car, locked or seat cargo container, whether or not mounted on a vehicle, trailer, coach, as defined by Section 635 of the Vehicle Code, any house car. None of these things exist anymore. So anyway, they amended it in 1984 and 1991, and it was one of those amendments for the statutes then that said whatever the place you were breaking into, especially a car, it had to be locked. If it was unlocked, that's tampering, not burglary. That's the nonsense that Scott Wiener tried to undo for 5 years. Hopefully he'll be more successful with this one, but I'm not holding my breath.
As they have attempted to engage in administrative enforcement against these folks who do not have permits. I want to thank our public works.
Yes, public works employees are not law enforcement, are the ones tasked with dealing with the criminals that are selling stolen goods. And because they're not law enforcement, they've been getting assaulted by the same people selling the stolen goods. I guess that's not a crime either.
Thank our public works employees for being here today, and thank you for all the work that you do. We began working last year with Mayor Breed and the Board of Supervisors.
That's the funniest thing about this presser. It didn't pass last year. when there was this whole wave of, hey, pay attention to what the legislature's doing, and we got to start being tough on crime, the legislature still voted down Scott Wiener's bill to make it so law enforcement could be involved with people selling stolen goods on the street.
We began working last year with Mayor Breed and the Board of Supervisors, and that bill, unfortunately, did not pass. And so we are here again, and again want to thank Mayor Lurie. Unfortunately, because of the chaotic street conditions caused by these fencing operations, the mayor, with the support of supervisors.
And these things always lead to so much more illegal activity. There's rampant prostitution and drug dealing going on every place there's selling of stolen goods. They're just hotbeds for criminal activity.
The mayor, with the support of Supervisor Ronen at the time, put a moratorium on street vending in this area.
That's right. So when Scott Wiener's bill couldn't pass, the supervisor of that district, Hillary Ronen, passed a blanket ban on all street vending, so nobody was allowed to do it. So all the people whose livelihoods depended on selling food or little tchotchkes that they make and the mission, they were just out of work or had to go somewhere else. So nobody gets to play because we can't do anything about the bad kids.
And that temporary moratorium remains in place.
That was a year and a half ago. It was supposed to go for like 90 days.
They felt the need to do that because of the chaos. But, of course, that is not what we want. We want street vending to happen, but we want it to happen safely. This bill is a very, very focused approach. If someone is selling, the Board of Supervisors will come up with a list of commonly stolen goods.
Okay, already I'm afraid. So the San Francisco Board of Supervisors has to come up with the list of what's going to be something that if you get caught selling, you probably stole it. What do you think is on that list?
If someone is selling, the Board of Supervisors will come up with a list of commonly stolen goods. And if someone is...
let's not forget, this is San Francisco, where the Walgreens had to lock up under chains the pizza and the ice cream. Everything's a commonly stolen good.
And if someone is selling one of those goods, those commonly stolen goods, on the street without a permit, without receipts showing that they purchased it, then they can be cited. And on the third citation, they can be cited with a misdemeanor.
But that's nothing. We don't enforce misdemeanors here. The jails are too full. That's nothing. This all means nothing. This is performative politics. Even if this passed, which it won't, it doesn't have any teeth in it. So on your third time getting caught for selling stolen goods, you're going to get a ticket, and maybe a ticket that could turn into a misdemeanor. It's nothing.
So we're not talking about prepared foods, and we're not talking about anyone who has a permit. If you have a permit, this bill simply doesn't apply to you. If you're not selling one of the commonly stolen goods, the bill does not apply to you.
And if it is you selling stolen goods, you're going to get 3 tickets before anything bad happens to you. If this passes, which I don't think it will. 800-222-KABC is the phone number, 1-800-222-5222. We'll hear more from State Senator Scott Wiener's nonsensical press conference on trying to undo the decriminalization that he voted on in 2018 of street vending that led to the loophole of being able to sell stolen goods in broad daylight and not get in trouble for it. And we'll hear what exactly is on that list of commonly stolen goods that they want to recriminalize. 800-222-KABC is the phone number. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. We're going through State Senator Scott Wiener's press conference where he announced legislation for the second year in a row to try to recriminalize selling stolen goods on the streets of San Francisco. I would also like him to do this in Los Angeles at MacArthur Park, but hey, it's not even going to pass up there.
I'm very kind of sketchy.
Oh, yeah. If you wonder how street vending got decriminalized in all aspects, you can thank Ricardo Lara, the same man that destroyed the insurance industry in the state. Doing a bang-up job there, Lara. Scott Wiener was asked, what are the commonly stolen goods in San Francisco? See, the way this law would work if it was passed, and again, it's only for San Francisco, which is weird because this is happening statewide, would be that the Board of Supervisors would have to come up with a list of commonly stolen goods. And then law enforcement can finally talk to these criminals again and see if they have a permit or a receipt for, I don't know, the cigarettes that they're selling. What are these stolen goods? Scott Wiener was asked that question.
Commonly stolen goods that this bill's trying to crack down on.
Yeah, I'm not going to be exhaustive, but I think when you walk down the street and you see someone who's selling like deodorant and you're like, hey, I just saw.
Okay. You got to remember that the sale of stolen goods is a two-way street. And it's not only that you steal something and you sell it, but somebody has to buy it. Who is buying deodorant on the streets of San Francisco or MacArthur Park in Los Angeles? Is it Old Spice? What is going on in your life that you are buying stolen deodorant?
Like deodorant, and you're like, hey, I just saw that in a wall.
Because if you say it's the homeless, I've smelled them. They're not using it.
Like deodorant, and you're like, hey, I just saw that in a Walgreens. I think it's pretty obvious to a lot of people when something is stolen. And now perhaps the person has a permit to sell deodorant and they have the receipts and they've purchased it.
Who gets into life saying, I want to get all my permits ready to go, set up a little stand in the Mission and sell deodorant?
That's probably not extremely likely, but it's, you know, there are pharmacies, our small businesses that are having a lot of stuff stolen. I think people know it when they see it, and the Board of Supervisors will have to go through a process to put together a focused list of these commonly stolen goods.
I can just say from the anecdotal evidence of I cover a lot of crime stories in California, cigarettes better be number one on there. And whoever has got such a Jones for the nicotine that they're buying stolen cigarettes, that's a gigantic monkey on your back, my friend. You need help. 800-222-KABC is the phone number. More with Scott Wiener next. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. We're going through the press conference today from State Senator Scott Wiener, who for the second year in a row is trying to introduce legislation that would recriminalize the sale of stolen goods on the streets of San Francisco. That is all thanks to a law written by Ricardo Lara in 2018.
I'm very kind of sketchy.
That Scott Wiener voted on and Jerry Brown signed into law. The Safe Sidewalk Vending Act decriminalized every aspect of street vending in a misguided attempt to protect our immigrant community. Well, it allowed for a loophole where you can sell whatever you want on the streets of any county that opted into this law, and Los Angeles did, and San Francisco did, and law enforcement cannot do anything about it. It has become an administrative issue with Public Works. They can give you a fine, but as we have seen in San Francisco, the criminals that are operating these stolen good stands, they can beat up the Public Works people and nothing happens to them. So Scott Wiener wants to make it so if his law passes, and it didn't last year, that if you get caught with stolen goods, ticket. You get caught with stolen goods again, ticket. You get caught with stolen goods again a third time, ticket and misdemeanor, which means nothing. It's California to a T. Here, let's hear more of the Q&A with State Senator Scott Wiener.
A crackdown on this before in the previous administration, but last time it ended up hurting a lot of those legal street vendors. So do a lot of them...
That's right. They couldn't do anything about the criminals, so they decided we're just going to ban street vending for everybody.
...literally carry these permits or receipt of goods. Is that what's different this time?
Yeah, so what this bill will do is provide the city with a much more effective tool to be able to crack down on the people who are fencing stolen goods on our streets. There was a state law passed in 2018, and that there are parts of California.
State law that you voted on. Scott Wiener voted for this.
That, unlike San Francisco, do not embrace street vendors, and they criminalize them and they harass them. And so there was a bill to say, let's move enforcement away from the police and towards administrative enforcement, which in San Francisco would be the Department of Public Works.
And in LA, it's the Department of Public Health.
And that that can work extremely well. But we're seeing that there are situations in San Francisco where that's not working well. And we need to have a very focused, limited police involvement to protect public safety. So
this is the most paper tiger bill of all time. He has addressed what the problem is, although he's part of the problem because he voted for this bill that originally decriminalized this, but he doesn't want to go as far as to recriminalize people selling stolen goods, which has led to the massive rise in retail theft.
So we don't have that tool currently. And so that's why we saw the moratorium enacted, which, has been, I'm not criticizing it for being put in because it was a terrible situation, but it's really been harmful to the legitimate street vendors who just want to conduct their business. And so this will provide
It's so funny because in an effort to protect the legal street vendors, they have enabled the criminals to go after the legal street vendors and victimize them. It's California to a T, everybody. You can thank Scott Wiener and you can thank Ricardo Lara.
I'm very kind of sketchy.
It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC.